when you're only using pharma, you're using a blunt force instrument, and the knockoff effect of that is huge, right? But when you use things like nutrition, chiropractic, exercise, meditation, you are working with the body. You are switching on genes, which switch on other genes, which switch on other genes to heal yourself.
Welcome to the 100-Year Lifestyle Podcast, dedicated to you and your loved ones living at 100% for 100 years and beyond. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Plasker. Welcome, everybody, to the 100-Year Lifestyle Podcast. Yes, we are transforming health and longevity worldwide so that you and your loved ones can live at 100% for 100 years and beyond. And I have with me a kindred spirit guest, great person, brilliant person, Dr. Yael Joffe. She is the Chief Science Officer, founder of 3x4 Genetics. She is a PhD in nutrigenomics, and I don't even know what all that means, Yael. So tell us what you're doing. I do know what it means, but I want people to hear from you. Thanks for being here and for your mutual concern for humanity, the way that you have it. So talk to us.
Well, thank you very much for the intro. I am very, very happy to be here. And I know that you know what it means. But 100%, let's make sure that everyone that's listening to this podcast also know what this word nutrigenomics, because, we don't want to make it more complicated than it already is. So really, if you think about the word nutrigenomics, there's kind of a big clue there, which is nutrition and genetics. So I will tell you that my first degree was as a dietitian before I studied genetics. And I met this extraordinary woman, Rosalind Garrison, in the year 2000. So we're talking about some time ago. And she said to me, we've started this company. It's a nutrigenomics company. And this is the future of medicine and nutrition. And I kind of looked at her and said, what? There's no connection between nutrition and genetics. This is me 23 years ago. And she said, well, actually there is. And that started this extraordinary journey for me on trying to understand, what was the relationship. Well, of course, she was right and I was wrong. And
you're a grown-up. You could actually admit that?
Totally wrong. Oh my gosh, Eric, I have been wrong so many times and continue to have my failings. So I think that's very important, right? That we acknowledge, there's so many genetic tests that I've built in the last 20 years. And I look back and go, wow, I can't believe that was the quality of my work then. And I think that that's so important, especially when you in a field like you and I, where we're really trying to push the boundaries, that you have to acknowledge that the work that you did before was just the building blocks of what comes ahead of us, and that we can just do better and better, and we learn. One of my completely off track, but one of my absolute favorite presentations I gave in 2019, I think, is I got on the stage and my first slide was like, "We have failed," and that people still talk about that, because generally we don't talk about our failures. We're very good at talking about our successes. Anyway, not to be diverted, let's make sure that we understand what nutrigenomics is. So there are two elements to this, and I'm going to give you like the 101 of nutrigenomics. The first is that our genetics is our blueprint. It's who we are, right? It's this code that defines everything about us. I always say genetics determines who we are and how we respond to the world around us, the food we eat, the supplements we take, the exercise we do, the toxins we expose to, stress we have, traumas, anything. Your genes will define how you respond to those things. But 99.9% of your genes are identical, but at 0.1%, your genetic code will be different. Your code and my code, we're different. And it's this 0.1% in our code that is different that will define how we respond to the world. So that's part one of understanding this amazing relationship between nutrition and genetics. And when I use the word nutrition, I'm actually talking about nutrition, lifestyle, sleep, stress, supplements, toxins. So I can't use nutrition, but it's actually everything that we do in our lives. The second part of the conversation, which is super exciting, which I really only got got stuck into in probably the last like 6-7 years, wasn't always something that I understood, was how do the decisions that we're making, again, food, supplements, exercise, lifestyle, and this is very much, of course, in your spaces, how do these decisions change the way our genes express themselves? And we talk about genes are switching on and switching off, and genes switching on and switching off is really defines everything about how our body works. And this field, they use this fancy word called epigenetics. Epi meaning above genetics, meaning it's not about the code, the blueprint, it's about how genes behave or how they switch on. So in my world, this world of nutrigenomics, we're interested in how am I different that makes me respond differently? And then knowing how I'm different, what are the best decisions I can make to help me make my genes behave in a way that can get me to 100.
Beautiful. And, it's great because we just did another podcast. I'm actually returning the favor. It's not really a favor. You asked to interview me. I wanted to interview you. It was a mutual thing because there is a lot of synergy here because we do talk about lifestyle. When you say nutrigenomics and you say the epigenetics, the area around the gene, the environment around the gene, how it changes the genes. I think why I love what you're doing at 3x4 Genetics and how you talk about it is that genetics, some people get a bad rap. Genetics got way too good a rap when it comes to, because I hear what you're saying, because it's not everything. And people will say that, hey, my parents had heart disease. I'm destined to have a heart attack. I'm destined to have cancer. I'm destined to have diabetes. I'm destined to have. So I'm not saying it's not good that genetics, I agree with you. It's really important to understand, but doesn't belong in the box that people put it in. They have much more control over how their body expresses their genetics than they give credit to. So I don't know if I'm
100%.
saying that right, and I'm not trying to discount anything.
No, I'm so happy you brought that up. So yeah, so basically there was this idea when kind of the Human Genome Project came out that was like, you're right, like genetics is everything. And it was like, well, my destiny is kind of set in stone. If I find out about my genes, like I find out what my future looks like. Absolutely not. So we need to be very clear here that the genes that you and I are talking about are what we call low penetrance genes. They're the genes that by themselves do not produce disease, but change the way your body works and changes the way your body reacts to things that we do and things that we're exposed to. So the really exciting thing about genetics is the complete opposite of the set in stone concept. It's if you have insight, and that's all it is, right? Insight. Genetics gives you insight into who you are. You can make the absolute most precise, targeted, and personalized decisions for yourself to be able to have power over what that destiny looks like. So it's like knowledge is power, and it's the same with genetics. This is because we can change gene expression. We can't change our DNA code. Well, we can, but we don't want, that's like what they call CRISPR, but that's not part of our world. So we use understanding our code to understand ourselves. And then we use the choices that we have, diet, lifestyle, exercise, meditation, cold water immersion, to change gene expression, to change our future. And so, this is the most powerful knowledge you can have about yourself to be able to make the most brilliant and empowering decisions going forward. So thank you for raising that, because it's really one of the myths that we need to dispel.
Yeah, and and we see it through the 100-year lifestyle, because we have said all along, the people that died 100 years ago, the people, if you were born 100 years ago, your scientifically predicted life expectancy was 55 years. So you could have said 100 years ago that genetically, we know that you're only supposed to live to be 55, but we know that that's not true. We know the body adapts. We know that it's birthright time and not borrowed time, and that if you make good choices, you could live healthy to 80, 90, 100 years and beyond. And, and so now here we are, we have a lot of people, maybe they're listening. And if we were to say, okay, Yael, what are the choices? Like, what are the things that people, if they understood their own genetic code, what are the things that they can learn about themselves that can help them target changes?
Sure, that's a big question. I could talk for a long time. I'll try. Let me think how I can answer it like very succinctly. So, what are the insights that we can gain by knowing our genetics?
Perfect. Better question.
Let me phrase it that way. So, I'm gonna categorize it into 4 different sections and talk to each one. So there are 4 like groups of individuals that we work with, and I'm going to speak to what are the insights in each one. The first is those individuals who really want to live their best life, live to 100 plus, live optimally, quality of living, energy, get rid of the break, like really make the best possible choices. That's group 1. We're going to talk about how we get it. Group 2, chronic disease, complicated, whether it's chronic fatigue, whether it's long haul COVID, whether it's autoimmune, like really battling to get quality of life, being to loads of doctors, not getting answers and looking for solutions. Group 2. Group 3, weight management. We're going to talk about that. And group 4, sports. Okay, now we'll go back to the beginning. The first group, which is really, speaks so much to 100, like so we talk about this concept of true personalization, that the idea of keto or paleo or vegan or low carb, like, or fasting, or whatever the next trend is going to be, is like, there is no way that every single diet plan that comes out is the right one for you, right? In some people, fasting works great, another person doesn't. And the same with keto and paleo and all of them. So you want to be able to understand exactly how your body reacts to foods, to the environment, to inflammatory markers, to toxins in our environment, to be able to personalize for yourself what is the absolute best intervention for you. So we use genetics to understand things like detox, inflammation, oxidative stress, methylation, glucose, hormones, cognitive function, memory, and the list goes on, because we want to know how your body is responding to toxins, to stress, to foods, to be able to fine tune the choices that you're making to be able to get you to that 100. So that is that optimal health group. And we look at 36 different areas at 3x4, 36 different areas that would help give us that insight to move you to that absolute true personalization, right? In terms of complex disease, so say we have, for example, let's talk about migraines. We know that migraines are a really big problem. They're getting more and more. They're absolutely debilitating. Usually a person will go through all the, drugs, go to the traditional primary care, and they'll just land up dosing themselves up on drugs and sleeping through the day as a way of managing their migraines. But actually, we love this concept of root cause analysis. Like, let's not treat what is the symptom, let's actually find out the why. Why are you getting migraines? Because migraines are multidimensional and can be caused by multiple variables. What if we could really find out what was causing the migraine to be able to start addressing it right up at the top so that it doesn't manifest down there? So that's a great example of how using genetics can give us information, again, around hormones, metabolism, around glucose, insulin. These are all the things that can impact around histamine overload, which is something that has a huge impact, gluten. So all these things will give us information on what are your triggers or drivers that may manage. And it might be cardiovascular disease, it might be autoimmune, it might be thyroid, it might be, of course, menopausal dysfunction. So it's any of these things. Genetics gives us insight into how these metabolic areas in our body are functioning optimally or not functioning optimally. And then we know as health professionals where to focus our intervention for the individual rather than just treating the symptom that they're manifesting. So that's group 2. Group 3, one of my favorite groups, which is weight management. So my PhD was in obesity. And the reason and I'm a dietitian, that I'm so passionate about this is because when I trained as a dietitian, we were told, calories in, calories out. You can use this horrible little formula and everyone gets the same calories. And if you follow the diet plan that I give you on my piece of paper, you should lose weight. And if you exercise X amount, you'll lose weight. And of course, that's just doesn't work like that. We know that it doesn't work like that. And one of the reasons it doesn't work like that is not because you got no willpower or because you've got no self-control or because you're greedy or anything. It's because your genetics play a huge role in every single part of how we manage our weight, whether it's how hungry we feel, how full we get after eating, how we binge eat or don't binge eat. I always call it, the buffet effect, like how we store energy, how we burn up energy, how exercise helps us burn energy. So now suddenly genetics is giving us insight into at least 50% of our experience of managing our weight. So I did 2 degrees in dietetics, and not once did I learn about genetics. So I came away with 50% of the knowledge that I needed to be able to help someone in their journey to manage their weight. So I can talk about that for like an hour and a half. And then last group, sports. I know this is an area that you're very passionate around, Eric. We absolutely love sports genetics because you can learn so much. Sports is even more than 50%. It's like 70, 80% will determine how you engage with exercise. And it can be literally getting off the couch and going for a walk or being a professional elite sports person. So we all have different sports potential. Some of us are long and slow and can go do marathons and ultras, and other of us are super powerful, right? Short exercise, but our muscles respond. We can give off great bursts. So we're good on the track. We're good lifting weights. We're good riding our mountain bike up a hill, but are not so good at the 100 milers, right? So we also know that we all experience injuries differently. And this is a big area for us. Why do some of us do exactly the same training and one of us goes on to become injured all the time, whether it's Achilles or ACL or rotator, another one doesn't? Genetics. So just these are some of the ideas that gives you an idea how we can really use genetics to get insight into why you are experiencing what you're experiencing. I know it was a big answer, but you did ask me a kind of a big question.
Well, listen, we want as much knowledge from you today as we possibly can. So, I mean, I think that's fantastic. And what's great, we think so much of the same way because you were so excited about 100. You were like flipping out during our conversation, and you got me excited about your excitement because we are on the same journey, on the same path. We care about people and we see the potential of humanity and individuals, and why not do all that we can to authentically, truthfully, honestly help people achieve that objective and experience the kind of life and the quality of life that they deserve. And obviously I got to be your number one fan because when you told me that you're such a huge fan of chiropractors, I was in chiropractic for yourself. I was like, okay, this woman, she really does understand how to achieve that. And so you talk about these things, and I took the test. I took the 3x4 test, and you use a lot of big words when you're explaining it to our lay audience here, but the testing that you do is really simple. And the report that people get, you don't have to be a PhD in neurogenomics or genomics or any whatever degree. You don't need a PhD to understand it. It really walks you through. Talk to us about why you designed it that way, and it's only like $300 to take a test.
But yeah, it's $299, and so what happened?
How are you guys surviving?
We're surviving. We're good. You shouldn't pay more than $299 for a genetic test. You shouldn't. And remember, you only take it once in your life. So
wait, let me just ask you real quick. This is really important. A lot of people ask me this. Do you sell the genetic material?
Oh gosh, no. Oh no,
organizations for like gene tracking and all that.
No way. We don't do any of that, right?
None of that.
That's not our business model. So, and what a great question. So before you take a genetic test, you should ask any company, are you selling my genetic information to a third party? So at 3x4, we destroy DNA after we have our results. The only person who has access to the data is yourself, the person whose DNA it is, and your practitioner, if you're working with a practitioner, and you giving that practitioner permission. Otherwise, that's it. Everything gets destroyed, and we don't bank data, we don't sell data, we don't give away data. But there are other companies who do that. and they have a very different business model, but that's not what we do. But hold on, I was going to talk about something else. Oh, about the design of the report. Yes, let's go back to that. So over the 20 years, I've been involved in many genetic startups where we've built genetic tests. And about 6-7 years ago, when I looked at my career in this space and I looked at all the reports that I built, I was quite horrified to see that after 15-16 years in the industry, every single genetic report looked the same. And so the genetic report that I built in 2000 looked the same as the one I built in 2014. And I was like, it downloaded quicker and the images were prettier, and there were more genes. But in every other way, it was still a report of data. So if you go to Quest or LabCorp and you get lab test done and you get this document that's impossible for you to do anything with, it's just got numbers on, and maybe it says whether it's high and in red or something. And that's pretty much where genetics was. And so when I started 3x4, it was really important for me to try to bring genetics to the individual in a way that you could understand it, you could engage with it, you can get excited about it, and you can understand what difference it makes in your life, like why you should care. So when I started 3x4, the first partnership I ever had was with a company called Sea Monster, who's a gamification company, because I realized that when scientists build products, we don't understand how the consumer engages with the information. We're not trained in design thinking and UX and user experience, and that's not our training. So the one thing I did very differently in 3x4 is I made sure that I wasn't the product developer. I was giving the science, but I wasn't driving. And I found this amazing company who focused on behavioral modification. How do you use gamification to change behavior, which is, of course, what Eric and I are trying to do. And I said to him, this is the information I have. How do you create a beautiful report that someone would engage with, understand, and get excited about? And so when you look at our reports, which you can get off our website, you'll see that there's a huge amount of color. We talk about the language of color so that now a health professional and yourself can speak a common language, which is purple color. And the other thing you'll notice about the report is pictures. So the whole report has got images in it that change. So every individual has a different picture from the individual before, because your genetic results change the image in the report depending on how they're impacting a part of your body. And the color coding continues through. So it doesn't look anything like any other genetic test that you've seen before, because we talk about storytelling, we talk about visual conversations. We want you to be able to understand what did we find in your genes, why should you care, and what difference is going to make in your life. So that's been a really big driver for us.
Yeah, it's great. And it really is easy. So you don't necessarily need a practitioner. You do not need a practitioner to take this test and get a report and review the report and get value out of the report.
No, you don't. So you can absolutely get it yourself. We do have a wonderful practitioner locator where we've got 3,000 practitioners who we have trained and mentored. And again, it depends you which bucket you're coming from. If you're coming from the complex disease, really battling, suffering, we really recommend that you go onto our practitioner locator and find a practitioner near you who can work with you on the journey. If you're looking at it from a optimal health or sports, you might want to take it to your personal trainer. You might want to take it to your team coach, your sports coach. So it really depends on what is your journey. But we've made sure that it's you can engage with it in whatever level that you want to, at a level that you understand it. But if you want to dive deeper and you want to explore more, then we have people to work with you.
That's great. And so if people download this, they can buy the kit, they send off their sample, they get a report back, and then they can go and locate somebody that, if they need to help them interpret it, although it is laid out in a way that people can read it and understand what they're reading.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in a month's time, we'll also be offering an opportunity where if you buy it from our website, we can also offer coaching, health coaching. So if you don't want to go the, a whole practitioner and it's not so common, but you want some hand-holding, mentorship, coaching, menus, recipes, we're going to offer that as well. So whatever journey you're on, we can support you. I think the important thing here, because I really don't want to talk only about 3x4, but I wanted to, the thing about genetics is understanding that it's not an answer by itself. That genetics doesn't give you a solution or an absolute answer. You need to be able to look at genetics as a piece of your puzzle.
Well, it helps you make choices. It helps you make the right choices.
But it's not like, oh, I'm going to do a genetic test and I'm going to forget everything else about who I am and my family history and what I eat and what exercise I do and what stresses I have in my life. No, you got to take all of that stuff and put it together with the information from the genetics and then be able to move forward. But by itself, genetics is not the holy grail of answers. And Eric, I was thinking, I had such an interesting thought when we were talking about 100. Why it's so, you were talking about why people only live to 55. And I'm not going to, and now they're living to 80s, and soon, thanks to the wonderful work you're doing, we're going to see more people living 100 plus. And so I was thinking about what is the role of genetics in that conversation, and so I just want to raise one point about why this field is so exciting. So genetics is evolutionary. So we talk about this fancy word, evolutionary biology, but just think about Darwin, right? That over time, our bodies responded to our environment and our genetics changed. But this happens over a very, very long time period. So the genetic code that we're all carrying around with us is the same genetic code pretty much that our hunter-gatherer ancestors had. So when they were living on the plains of Africa and they were hunting for their food, and when they got food, they ate it because they needed to they didn't have a fridge to put it in. And also they needed to make sure that it was, got a lot of nutrients. But then they would go through phases of famine, eating roots and what they could carry with them. That genetics that they were carrying with them is the same genetics that we're carrying with us. So what has changed? What has changed is our environment, the quality of the food, the quantity of food, the processing of the food, how sedentary we've become, the toxins in our environment. So I always say, the trick of longevity is finding the connection between our evolutionary genetics and our lifestyle. Because when we can bring the two together, when we can make them match each other, we can then get to the 100.
I love that. And one of my favorite sayings out of the 100-year lifestyle is your innate intelligence will organize around your thoughts, your choices, and your lifestyle. And so the body's innate intelligence, our innate intelligence, built within two cells coming together, becoming 80 quadrillion cells to express the uniqueness of you. And then within that intelligence is the ability to adapt. And we get exposed to so many things, like you just mentioned, so many things that we do get exposed to, that if our communication system within the nervous system, which is why, as a chiropractor, I love what we do, because I can adjust the atlas on somebody and it can affect somebody completely differently, 10 people completely differently, because of the way that the pressure or the interference over that nervous system is affecting the expression of how that nerve is communicating. And I've been doing a lot of research since our last meeting, by the way, on nerve degeneration and genetics and epigenetics. Excellent. And how nerve degeneration changes the genetic expression. And it's such an important thing because, people are making choices, they're learning about what they're doing. And, maybe there's some miscommunication over the nervous system. You clear that out, the genes express themselves in a different way. And so I do think it's a really important synergy that people understand what is the foundational genetic makeup while also trusting their innate ability to adapt and the expression of that intelligence over the nervous system. So
allowing your innate intelligence to express itself. I mean, that's ideally what health is when you, as I say, tapping into that evolutionary biology, that innate intelligence, and allowing it to be in balance.
Yeah, we're going to create 150 if we keep
Oh
talking.
my gosh. Oh my God. I've never thought of chiropractic like that, Eric, but I really like that idea, and if you think about it, like when you are with a chiropractor and you are being adjusted in some way, that's all gene expression, right? That adjustment in its powerful, concentrated way is switching on genes throughout the body, the brain, the neural system, but it's an epigenetic profession. We can now rename it. Chiropractic is an epigenetic profession because that's entirely what it's doing.
Yeah, and our profession has been teaching that to each other for a long time. We've just been terrible about communicating that to the world until the 100-year lifestyle.
And letting the world know how fantastic it is.
Right.
I suppose nutrition is also an epigenetic profession. We're probably all, but I think the difference with chiropractic is it's extremely powerful. Not that nutrition is, but in one small moment, you are probably switching on 10,000 genes in one manipulation that can alter that innate intelligence. So this is new thinking for me. I love it, but really, it talks about why it's so powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had the opportunity last weekend. I was a keynote speaker at the International Chiropractors Association National Convention, and there was a research panel. I spoke for 7 hours on the first day, then did a keynote speech that night, and the next day, while I was sleeping all day long, was on a research panel, to just with some brilliant minds in our industry. And one of my favorite people, Stephanie Sullivan, she's a PhD in neuroscience and she's a chiropractor, and she did an amazing presentation on neurosignatures, which is really cool because it's really about a lot of what you're talking about is about genetic expression, how the nerves express themselves, what are the signatures. And I asked her, I said, are you talking about genetic expression? And she didn't fully answer the question because she got distracted. I'm going to go back to her. We're going to do an entire episode on it. But you guys are two good minds that I think should get together at Life University. The work that you're doing, the work that we're doing, the work that they're doing. We sponsored a research project there on the importance of lifetime care and what it means to have the body functioning at a very high level for a lifetime, and the relationship between genetic expression and neurological expression, and what does that really mean to a person. And I love that we're having these conversations. Like you said, they're new cutting edge conversations. That is the future, in my opinion, much more significant to the health of humanity than pharma.
Oh yeah. Well, someone, what's that analogy when you talk about taking a hammer to a nail, and the problem with pharma, my colleague, Dr. Christine Horton, often says that the difference between activation and modulation is that it's a blunt force instrument, pharma. So when you take a pharmaceutical, and not that some pharmaceuticals aren't very necessary and extremely helpful, but when you're only using pharma, you're using a blunt force instrument, and the knockoff effect of that is huge, right? But when you use things like nutrition, chiropractic, exercise, meditation, you are working with the body. You are switching on genes, which switch on other genes, to heal yourself. And I think that's the difference between activation, which is that hammer effect, which is what we do with pharmaceuticals, versus modulation, which is enabling the body to heal itself. And a perfect example of this is such an interesting one. We talk about this idea of weak pro-oxidants, that the idea that oxidative stress, or, like we talk about free radicals, superoxides, is a bad thing is actually not true. Because if you can give your body just enough oxidative stress, like exercise is actually oxidative, right? And inflammatory, it switches on genes in the body to then go into the mode of being anti-inflammatory and antioxidative. So it's like poking the bear, right? So you want to have these oxidative inflammatory exposures and then allow the body to do the healing. Now, that can never happen when, and so the same thing with vitamin C. You can give thousands of milligrams of vitamin C, and for every molecule of vitamin C you're taking, you're going to quench or kind of take away one superoxide, one free radical. Or you can give your body something to switch on a gene called manganese superoxide dismutase, very fancy word, or we call it SOD2. And you could switch on SOD2, and SOD2 will quench millions of superoxides. So one is a kind of an artificial molecule that came out of a bottle that's doing a one-on-one job, or you can switch on a gene which is doing a 1 to million job. And this is the difference between that. And don't get me wrong, like supplements, we just need to be very, very careful which supplements we're using so that we're not filling holes in, but we're really changing gene expression. And I think, again, in your work, it's the same thing. When you're doing chiropractic, you are switching on the genes that are then healing the body rather than trying to kind of, I don't know. I lost my energy there, but I think I
well said. No, really, really well said. And you know what's interesting? There's so many people that we see now that have, like you talked about, the group that has chronic disease, the children that have been, in my opinion, butchered by really bad care and really mistakes in judgment and in some ways criminality, to be honest. And it really is frustrating to me. And then we see on the other side, it's like the saviors of those people to help them survive better is a very humanitarian, important thing for the world, because we don't want the suffering. We want to minimize the suffering. And I think it's important. I contribute to those things, and probably you do too. The work that you're doing and the work that we're doing, I think, is so important because, and we might not understand the importance of our work, I believe, Yael, for maybe another 10, 20, 30, 40 years. When we talk about human potential and prevention of disease and prevention of, like we say, dis-ease, disharmony, weakness, and imbalance before it becomes disease. We say, Thomas Edison, that Thomas Edison quote, the doctor of the future. Have you ever heard that quote? Right. Yeah. The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. Well, I changed his quote. I don't know if I told you that.
No, I haven't.
He's not going to get mad at me. He can't get mad at me. I changed the quote, but it's a better quote for today. His quote was right for the time. For today, here's the new quote. The doctor of the present, not the doctor of the future, but the doctor of the present will give no medicine, but interest his patients in the care of the human frame and diet, and in the cause and prevention of dis-ease, dis-ease. So be present. And I think that's what you're doing in so many ways. That's what we're doing in so many ways, is looking to eliminate the cause of dis-ease through choices and understanding of our genetics and the expression of those genetics epigenetically through our lifestyle and the way we take care of ourselves internally, so that we can function at our highest level for a lifetime, 100% for 100 years. And I want you to, in your best way, take that and run as long as you want, wrap it up, because what a great way to just build on the future and get everybody having their genetic testing done in the right way with a great report. End it for us here today.
That was so good. Like, I don't think I could beat that. I guess I could just say, I completely agree. I do think there's an element of, I think we're you and I and our work and my wonderful team, we're at the right place at the right time. I always say, someone once asked me the question, how were you lucky enough to land up working in nutrigenomics and genetics and nutrition? And I was like, yeah, 20 years lucky, that this is the time. We are living in that time, and there is no time other than now to keep our efforts up and to keep the pressure, because the shift is happening, and the big shift is not that we get smarter, but that the individual takes responsibility for their health. And until we make that shift, and we don't have a paternalistic kind of healthcare system, which is that clever doctors tell individuals what to do, we'll never solve this. But I think it's happening. And I think you and I are very much part of that movement amongst many other brilliant, brilliant minds. And I'm very excited for 10 years' time when we can look back and have a look at this kind of time that you and I were working in, and be very grateful and that we were able to do the work that we did.
Well, you are doing great work, and great organization, great people, great friends. So thank you for all of that. And, for you, like you say, 20 years, working that. And I always remember every day when I come in, I think of Max. I never asked for this. It's such a serendipitous thing. I've never asked for this, but here we are. I'm so grateful that we're here, and I'm grateful that we're here together. So everybody, Yael Joffe from 3x4genetics.com, look them up. Look into their test. They're great people. You'll learn a lot about yourself, and it'll help you get on the path, living 100% for 100 years. Thanks for listening, everybody. Remember, your 100 is coming. You make the call. Thank you so much for joining us on the 100-Year Lifestyle Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have topics that you want us to cover, people you want us to interview, maybe you have some stories that you want to share, stories of yourself, loved ones, people in your life, we would love to hear from you and share your story. Please email us at my100@100yearlifestyle.com. And remember, nobody wants to get to 100 or even 50, 60, or 70 for that matter, crippled, broke, and alone. So please share the 100-Year Lifestyle, all of our podcasts, social media pages, website with your family, friends, and coworkers so they can take this journey with you. And until next time, adjust your lifestyle. Live your best life today and every day on the road to a sensational century. Dr. Plasker, signing off.